Okay, so I guess I'll go ahead and begin. Thanks, everyone. My name is Tim Larson. I'm the president of the Mountain View Mobile Home Alliance. Wanted to thank everyone for coming tonight to the Mobile Home Alliance Candidate Forum. We have with us 4 of our favorite candidates for City Council here who have graciously agreed to be with us on a Friday night to answer our questions and share their vision for the future of Mountain View. We are live on Zoom, hosted on our website, MVMHA.com, and will be streamed to YouTube. We'll record this and have the session remain available on YouTube, and then share that recording with our email list, and then probably summarize some of the answers here in our famous BCAPs that many of our mobile home residents rely on to stay up to date with happenings in Mountain View politics. Just a brief description of how the session is going to work. We'll begin. Each candidate will have 90 seconds to introduce themselves, and then we'll move through a series of questions that were submitted and chosen by members of our mobile home communities. Each candidate will have up to 90 seconds or 3 minutes, depending on each question. The orders of the respondees for each question are chosen at random, and then the timer is on the screen there that will let you see both sort of the topic at hand and then how much time is remaining. And with that, let's go ahead and begin with the candidate introductions. So it looks like first up is Lucas Ramirez.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you to the Mobile Home Alliance for hosting this candidate forum. My name is Lucas Ramirez. I have the great honor and privilege to serve as the mayor of Mountain View this year. And I'm running, I think this is a theme you will probably hear repeated often. I'm running to complete the work that the council had provided in a work plan approved in 2019. We had a lot of great programs and policies that we halted during the pandemic, shifting instead to emergency operations and pandemic relief, which was the right thing to do. And I'm proud of the work that we did, but it also meant that a lot of the work that we had committed to doing for our community has yet to be complete. So I'm hoping that we'll be able to continue what I think is a very progressive and ambitious work plan and achieve many important goals related to anti-displacement, housing affordability, environmental sustainability, increasing parks and open space, many other important amenities and services, and fully implementing the North Bayshore Precise Plan. All of those things that hopefully we can achieve within the next several years. Looking forward to the discussion. Thank you.
Perfect on the timing. Thank you on that. Next up, we have Ellen Kamei.
Great. Thanks so much, Tim. Hello, everyone. If you're wondering why we're having a candidate forum on a Friday, blame our mayor. No, just kidding. So as was mentioned, my name is Ellen Kamei. I've been serving the last 4 years as your council member, last year as mayor. And for 6 years before that, I was on our Environmental Planning Commission. I am a 3rd generation Mountain View resident, and 8 months ago, I had the 4th generation of Mountain View. I had my son. So I'm a new working mom, and like many of you, trying to balance living in a very high cost region. And I'm running for re-election to, as the mayor mentioned, continue some of the things that were put on pause during this, 28 months of the pandemic. Some of those things including obviously addressing housing, both affordable housing, but middle income and displacement strategies. Another is trying to create more multimodal transportation to help accelerate our city sustainability and climate change goals. I also want to enhance our parks and open space for our neighborhoods. And I want to continue engaging with all of you, our residents, directly, especially when it comes to topics that deal with the most vulnerable in our community. I look forward to the discussion tonight. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Ellen. Now we have Li Zhang.
Hi, my name is Li Zhang. Thank you very much for inviting me to this forum. I immigrated to the US over 30 years ago, seeking new opportunities to live my best life. I came here with practically nothing, and I gone through graduate school here, and after I got my PhD in chemistry, I moved down to this area to take a job. And that's how I started my life in Mountain View roughly 21 years ago. And I really fell in love with the city. And since then, I met my husband, and I were able to purchase a home and raise our son. And we've been all very involved in the community services. And I've worked since then in the tech and the science sectors. What bring me to the council election, it was due to my education from the Mountain View's Chinese Civic Leadership Academy. And since then, I found a new venue that I can serve the community, which is what I've really enjoying being doing. And if I'm elected, my plan is for sufficient housing development to meet state requirements. But I think we've already taken the time and efforts to ensure that we can sustain the growth with prudent investments in infrastructure.
Okay, thanks, Lee. That is time for that question. And Allison Hicks.
Hi, yes, I'm Allison Hicks. I'm currently the vice mayor, and I agree with what the mayor and Councilmember Kamei have said, that I'm running in part to finish the great work we put in our work plan, but we're not able to complete because of the pandemic. I've lived in Mountain View for over 20 years. I've raised my 2 children here and sent them to public schools. I ran for council 4 years ago because Mountain View is growing and changing, and I want that growth to be good growth for all of us. I have a background in city planning. I've helped plan many of the things that we need here: affordable housing, green schoolyards, walkable streets, and revitalized downtowns. I've worked in the cities of Oakland and San Jose and for a nonprofit community land trust. Outside of my work life, I've also long been a community activist. I've worked on successful campaigns for rent control in Mountain View, to raise the minimum wage in Santa Clara County, reproductive rights in college, progressive taxation, and community controlled housing, which is something that I think we could use in Mountain View. So as we've said, there's more work to do in Mountain View. We need better safe bike routes to school, more parks, more canopy, and more affordable housing. I chair the Council Environmental Sustainability Committee. Oops, we're done.
And that's time. Thanks, Allison. Well, you'll have plenty more time to answer with some of our next questions. So now let's move on to the first topic for tonight. This topic will be a 3-minute answer question. And the topic here is, rent and the challenges that people are facing affording living in Mountain View. As you all know, there was an urgent need to stabilize our community and reduce housing turnover and evictions. This led to a Mountain View voter enacted measure in 2016, Measure V, that did not cover mobile homes at that time, which we discovered through a lengthy lawsuit and process. But that led to, in 2021, City Council enacting an ordinance to protect mobile homeowners and renters. Many families are still struggling to afford staying in their homes due to rent increases with inflation and other challenges in this area. And it's still a very difficult problem for citizens in Mountain View. So the question is, what tools do you think would best accomplish the goal of keeping people from being displaced by rents? How would you ensure that the existing protections are applied effectively? And what other protections would you consider enacting in Mountain View? With 3 minutes, Lee, you're the first one.
Hi, yes, Mountain View does have rental control for apartments now. Good news, and as you just alluded to, this also apply to the rental for the mobile home right now, which is fantastic news. I do know the SB zero will be sunset in roughly 2030. And I would believe to continue for the protection for the community that we can have a local ordinance in place for to control to continue the rental control. And some other things I can think about is, it's like there's also always two sides of the things. Since we have rental control, that de-incentivize some of the property owners to, really to upgrade the stuff for the tenants. So so this is like the drawback of it, but due to the high rents in Mountain View, I do think the protection should stay. And I'm considering, because from my communication with some of your community members, they even the percentage control increase of the rent is too much for some of the members. I'm just wondering if we can set to a certain dollar amount, if that's possible. We can reach out to the community, see, it's not a percentage, it's a certain dollar amount. If it's over a certain dollar amount, if we can, put that in place for really low income, really some members in the community have difficulties on this. So that's maybe something I would consider if I'm elected. I hope I answered this question.
That's great. Thank you. Yeah, and there's no need to spend all 3 minutes if, that's just, we're letting people answer as much as they would like. Lucas, you're up next.
Thank you. I have a suspicion most of these answers will be largely additive. I think several of the programs that Lee had spoken about are important. And the most important is the preservation of the Community Stabilization and Fair Rent Act, which was approved by the voters as Measure V in 2016, as Lee had mentioned. That is the primary source of protection for most renters, those living in apartments subject to rent control. And there are some additional tools within the CSFRA that renters should be aware of. A petition process that allows for a reduction in rent, for instance, when services are reduced. I think that's something that the city can help inform the community about to the extent that renters aren't aware of that protection. And then also, as Lee had mentioned, SB 330 is an important tool that doesn't specifically protect renters from increasing rents, but from a different problem that we've seen occur frequently in Mountain View, displacement resulting from the demolition of existing rent-controlled housing when redevelopment occurs. So I agree completely that we need to explore replacement requirements substantially similar to what SB 330 provides. Additionally, I think other candidates will speak to this, so I don't want to steal too much of others' thunder, but I think we should explore a Community Opportunity to Purchase Act, which is something that is referenced in our housing element, and that will provide an opportunity for, we could do a COPA program or tenant opportunity to purchase, which is for tenants, obviously. So that's an important program that we can use to preserve existing affordable units and prevent displacement from demolition entirely. And then because the CSFRA was approved as a charter amendment, it's more challenging to strengthen that program, but the mobile home rent stabilization ordinance can be amended. And I know there has been a lot of interest in the community in exploring amendments to address concerns that the council didn't anticipate, like a high inflation environment. So lots of opportunity for improvement there. And then the only other set of programs I think we should continue to explore are the direct financial assistance programs that the council has already invested in pretty heavily. We may not be able to sustain a guaranteed basic income program indefinitely, but those kinds of programs help keep people housed, because when you don't have financial stability, you're not going to be able to pay the rent. Thank you.
Thank you, Lucas. And as Alex mentioned, COPA is something that we will be talking about next. So not going to stop you from addressing it, but you will have the opportunity to talk about that specifically in the next question. Allison.
Yeah, so when I think of this question, when I think of what tools we could use to keep people from being thrown out due to higher rents, I think of four things. And the first is a strong and committed and educated rental housing committee as part of our enforcement of Measure V. When I talk to people, and the thing in particular that I think about when I talk to rental housing committee members after they've been on for a few months, one of the main things they've told me is they find the lobbying by landlord professionals is very heavy, and that the tenants sometimes have difficulty speaking up. So I think it's a really important function of the council to pick very good rental housing committee members who can kind of cut through that lobbying and be the voice of the voiceless. So that's one thing. It's Measure V and making sure we have a strong rental housing committee. A second thing would be a council that would be strongly committed to making sure that the mobile home rent control is tailored to your needs and is open to hearing from you. And again, not just to the owner's lobby. A third thing is what other people have spoken about is we have a tenant relocation and assistance ordinance, and we also have protections for people who maybe lose their housing due to redevelopment. We also have SB 330, the state law that is similar. And we're going to have to, as that state law comes to expiring, we're going to have to strengthen our own city law for that. And the last thing would be a community opportunity to purchase program, which I'm actually very hopeful for, and I find very promising because it's similar to what I worked with for about 10 years when I worked in Alameda County. It's specifically focused on preservation of small amounts of already affordable housing.
Sorry, thank you very much, Allison. And finally, we have Ellen to close this session out.
Great, thanks. Well, I really appreciate the word tool in the question, because I do think it's a toolkit. I don't think there's any one thing that will be the panacea to displacement. So I agree that one of the items that we have in the city of Mountain View is the CSFRA and our rental housing committee, and we've seen that kind of evolve since 2016 and trying to be responsive to the issues that have come up, and particularly kind of how we deal with pass-throughs for seismic retrofit and any other types of improvements. And so I think that's kind of one way we're trying to make sure people don't stay displaced. I think the city's also tried really hard to take action on its own, right? We have our inclusionary, low-income housing requirement on new construction. We've tried to beef up our TREO, our tenant relocation assistance program. We've revised our below market rate ordinance. And then particularly in the pandemic, we beefed up rent relief. We are one of the cities in Santa Clara County that had the largest rent relief program. I think it was somewhere with 6 million of both public and private donations to make sure that people didn't have to be displaced. And then on top of that, working and trying to follow state legislation related to the eviction moratorium. I think a lot of it is making sure that people can actually stay housed. So, some things that I'd like to continue are obviously our rent relief program. It's something that the Community Services Agency does administer, and we need to be vigilant and make sure that we're still making sure people can afford their rent. We're also looking at 2 upcoming things as a council. We're looking at our R3 zoning update as a way to maybe mitigate some displacement and get different types of housing product. we are also going to be looking at a displacement strategy. That's something that we, the current council, has asked for the last 4 years, as we've seen kind of demolition and new construction. And so really looking forward to being able to tackle that. And then looking towards the future, obviously trying to take whatever we have and augment that. And what I really like too is the city has adjusted, for example, the accessory dwelling unit ordinance that we have. A lot of state legislation has come forward too, but the city has tried to adopt all of those at once and make some administrative changes to make it easier for people to stay in, that type of housing. So all of those together in aggregate are ways that we're able to address the issue while acknowledging that we need to do more.
Very good. Thank you, Ellen. As mentioned, the next question will be specifically about the community opportunity to purchase. Mountain View has produced a lot of housing units in recent years. They are mostly market rate rentals or high-priced row homes, which makes it difficult for individuals to save or enter into home ownership, and has in some cases led to some displacement, as you've heard many of the candidates speak about. So a Community Opportunity to Purchase Act or ordinance is a policy that could give qualified nonprofits first rights to make an offer on a residential property when units are being put up for being redeveloped and then leading to displacement of existing residents. A COPA program is in the long-term policy document known as a housing element, which could provide some additional protection in the event that a landlord decided to try and sell or redevelop housing that they are currently renting out. So the question is, given that COPA is included as a program in the housing element, how would you envision using the resources of the city, county, and state to help people attain ownership and control of their housing situation? And what do you see as the most important challenges in enactment? So this one is a 90-second question. And first up, we have Lee.
Hey, I have the honor to speak first. So, anyway, I think even though the program is already put into the housing element, but the development of this particular program in Mountain View hasn't been started. My understanding of this, so the people would be aware, is City of Mountain View doesn't really have any control over this. It's basically City of Mountain View will have to be like working with the agency who are specialized in these kind of housing purchase, and so there's no special funding allocated to help as far as I understood for the renter to purchase this housing, except city will behave like liaison between the third party, maybe some nonprofit organization would help them making this purchase possible, working with the property owner as well as the developer. This is my understanding of it. Beyond this, I would probably need to do more research if I'm elected. So this is my answer to the question.
Thank you, Lee. Next is Allison.
Hi, so I'm actually very comfortable with the concepts of community opportunity to purchase and community land trust, because I worked for a community land trust in Alameda County for about a decade, and they're a great way to preserve naturally affordable housing, whether it be a mobile home park or usually small clusters of housing, duplexes, sixplexes. You can preserve larger amounts of housing as well. And they're used a lot on the East Coast, but increasingly on the West Coast, they're being seen as a good solution. They're now planning some, I guess, in San Jose, which maybe the mayor can tell us more about, and being implemented in San Francisco. They basically provide a clear path for a nonprofit and community ownership of housing. And in San Francisco, what they do is pre-qualify a number of nonprofits to be able to run COPA programs. make the purchases. And then they have what they call San Francisco Accelerator Fund. It's a loan fund. What you have to do, you're basically given, let's say your mobile home park, we're going up for sale. Would be given, the nonprofit would be given quick word that they need to buy it, and it would be good to have something like an accelerator fund to jump on that quickly, and then maybe later to work with a community bank. And I think as they become more common, those kinds of funding sources will also become more common. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Allison. Lucas.
Thank you. I am only sort of tangentially familiar with the work that's being done in San Jose. I do work for the city, and I have a colleague who's been monitoring this a little bit more closely than I have. My understanding is there are two primary components. One is creating a regulatory framework that actually provides either a qualified list of nonprofits or tenants, if that's a model we want to explore, an opportunity, some period of time to have the first right of refusal, essentially. Can they find the funding and make a competitive offer to purchase whatever property is in question? So creating that regulatory framework is the policy work that the council would have to do. But more important, I think, is you can give someone that opportunity, but if there's no funding available to actually complete the transaction, then assigning 30 or 60 or 90 days is not going to be terribly valuable. So I think the bigger question for us is, where can we find the resources to make a program like this successful? And I know the council, through the housing element process, has said we're interested in exploring a local source of revenue for this type of program in affordable housing, but only after we've exhausted the regional effort. And if that's not successful, then we would explore local funding. Thank you.
Thank you, Lucas. And last we have Ellen.
Great, thanks. So I feel like this question is really tied to the one before, because to me it's all about how do we keep more people in Mountain View, and given that over 60% of our community rents, I think, oh, is my thing not going? Sorry.
Oh, you can keep going. You just don't.
Not that I want to give myself extra time, but so I do think that looking into every possibility is something of interest, because I do think that people who live in Mountain View would like to see some sort of light at the end of the tunnel, which is an ownership opportunity. So, one of the good things about a COPA program is that we don't have to reinvent the wheel. We have different cities in just our Bay Area region that have them, that we can look to for best practices. So one of the things that I'd like to see the city do is kind of do a study and economic analysis, and then come back to us with some best practices. In the city, we tend to do a lot of pilot programs. So perhaps it's, a 2 to 3 year pilot program on how this would work and be implemented. But I think we in Mountain View can be proud of the fact that we're always trying new things, and we're always looking for creative partnerships. I think the one thing that's going to be a little bit difficult, which the mayor mentioned, is a resource issue. It's about being able to afford the acquisition of the land, construction, purchase, and rehabilitation sometimes. And so, hopefully through the state, or we've been looking at a, regional affordable housing measure, maybe those are some ways that we can do the implementation of a COPA. Thanks.
Great. Thank you, Ellen. Moving on to the next question. This next question is sort of on the more broad topic of city development, and you'll have 3 minutes to respond. So we've seen a lot of development around Mountain View over the past few years. There's numerous projects next to Santiago Villa. There's a big project being run by Sobrado right now. And this has led to many in the mobile and manufactured home community to sort of watch with great interest as the general plan has evolved, as well as the precise plans and master plans and the overall visioning process, which sort of lay the foundation for local zoning, controlling what types of housing or commercial properties can get built, public works, schools, all of these things that will impact our lives going forward. So the question is, what do you think should be our city's priorities when it comes to evaluating development proposals? Are there regulations you would consider introducing or eliminating? If you wanted to talk about changes or improvements to any precise plans, or how you think the city and its residents can best steer the process. So it's kind of an open-ended question. You do have 3 minutes to respond. And with that, Lucas is first.
Thank you. I think any of us can write a dissertation on this subject. So I think where I'll start with is the changing regulatory framework at the state level. It's really made it more challenging for cities to negotiate in the way that we used to be able to in the context of development. Most of the development that we see is code compliant, and all that means is it complies with the rules and regulations that we as the city have put in place. And when a project is code compliant, we have less discretion and sometimes no discretion in making changes. And that's because state law has cracked down on bad actor cities who will deny projects or add unreasonable conditions to projects that comply with the rules and regulations that they had approved. And so now, as a consequence, cities like Mountain View also don't have the same level of authority that we used to ask for a little bit more or to make the kinds of changes that maybe the community would like to see. So in my opinion, the most important thing, and Councilmember Kamei had alluded to this in the context of the R3 update, is if we don't like the outcomes that we're seeing, we need to change the rules so that way we get outcomes that we actually like. Are there regulations that you would either introduce or eliminate? I think that's exactly the conversation that we need to have as a community, because it will depend on the area we're talking about. The advantage of the precise plans that we have is those took years to develop and were done in close collaboration with the community. So I don't feel there's as much of a need to modify the precise plans unless we're finding there's a deficiency somewhere. But the conventional zoning districts, R3 or industrial areas, commercial areas, those are a little bit more challenging because those were established decades ago and we really haven't modified them since. And so when redevelopment occurs, for instance, in R3, oftentimes what we get are projects that displace people, don't provide parks, don't provide affordable units, and just sort of maximize the development of the property. They're not producing the kinds of outcomes that I think our community would like to see. So we need to change the rules. We need to amend our zoning code to help push development into a direction that is community supported. And that means we need to go back to the community to understand when properties redevelop, and they will, because we're talking about a lot of structures that are approaching the ends of their useful lives. What do you want to see there? What are the most important things for the community? And I think we're going to hear a lot of interesting answers depending on the neighborhood we're working in. Thank you.
Thank you, Lucas. Next up is Ellen.
Great, thank you so much. So gosh, a couple different thoughts. I would say one of the things that I'm happy that the city is doing is we hired a legislative affairs team, because we realized what the mayor was saying is that we were seeing so many bills on the state level having to do with housing development, that it was becoming a full-time job. And with the legislative team, I think that is how Mountain View can be more resourceful, I think, in trying to find opportunities, but also in how what the state is doing, which sometimes can feel like a kind of blunt object, with what we're currently doing. And so one of the things that the city's tried to do as we've gone forward is have some predictability for the development community as well as residents. And I think that's where the general plan and the precise planning processes are things that I support. But kind of what we've seen is when things like the general plan were created a decade ago, they don't necessarily stay evergreen. And so it has required us as a council to make changes. And so, for example, we've been looking at the downtown precise plan, because we were seeing a lot of code compliant projects come forward that don't necessarily fit with where we want to go with downtown. In terms of something that I'm interested in introducing, is there's been quite a bit of discussion on council about how there was the Moffett Precise Plan called out in our general plan. And I would like to see that, especially as we redo our downtown precise plan. We're looking at a transit center master plan. I think it makes sense to look across Moffett and to kind of wrap up all the precise plans that we discussed. And I also, and in terms of steering the process, one of the other things I'm happy about is the city now has a communications office. We have a chief communications officer with about 3 other people, as well as our Office of Multilingual Affairs doing translation, and in meeting real translation that I tried to champion last year as mayor. And so I think the more that we can have community outreach in language for people, the more we can hear directly from residents what they'd like. And so we've seen that a little bit, kind of scratching the surface with the housing element and the R3 zoning update. But I think as we look forward, I'd really like to see even more of that.
Thank you very much, Ellen. Now we have Lee.
Hi, this is one of the reasons I want to put myself up for running city council. I think the city needs to ensure the new development provide for their fair share of city infrastructure and also further complete neighborhoods with parks and neighborhoods serving retail. I understood the zoning code sometimes is not in compliance with the state law, and as well as the precise plan, some kind of part, the shopping centers, which was zoned previously as commercial use, would actually, once you redevelop them, you don't have to put enough retails in there. That's one of my concerns. Of course, the other concerns are through upzoning, the displacement issue for the renters. All these, I think, need to be carefully planned out. I do think, the community outreach as in the summer, it's not really adequate. A lot of people, like me was one of them, work full time and don't really understand the in and out of all these differences, like a precise plan versus a general shopping center, which is all just different kinds of zoning codes. And people get a little frustrated and confused. So I do think outreach explain to the regular residents in a layman term what that really means for them. And that would be very important. So then you can get some feedback from them. And as well, I understand the city's duties, jobs is, kind of a liaison between what developer wants to do and what residents want to see. So, from all the meetings I've attended through the summer until now, I found like the communication, there were some issues with communicating that need to be improved, I would assume. So overall, I think the city council are trying to do their best job, but might not be enough. I do want it to have a more balanced approach, not just keeping at full force and put the infrastructure and the traffic, all these other important issues for the residents in the back burner. And we should put them at the front and center. That's why I'm running for city council. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Lee. And Allison.
Thank you. Well, when I think about what the city's priorities should be when we evaluate development proposals, there are 2 big things that come to mind. And the first one is thinking about development as human-focused development. Often we're so focused on how the cars will get around, where the cars will park, how many units it is. These are important things, but I think one of the things that we often lose sight of is, will the development or do the developments as a whole make great public places? That's what a city is about. It's about people gathering together. So great public places to gather, walk, bike, parks, public squares, streets, streetscapes, small businesses. Are we doing these kinds of things? And are they also as a whole, are they sustainability and equity focused? So that's one thing I think of when I look at development priorities. And then the second is, are we building housing of all types to meet the needs of people at all income levels, all ages, family sizes, and creating a jobs housing balance? Now, you don't look at that with every individual proposal if it's an office proposal, but as a whole, those are kind of the big overview. And then the next question is how to do it, which I think some of the other candidates have mentioned. I'm going to mention one big thing about how to do it, which is we're under a lot of pressure, both from the state and from developers, to streamline our development process. And we have something called a matrix study where we're studying how to do that. And one of the things that I want to make sure is that while we're streamlining things, we don't lose sight of human-focused development. And that I think the way to do that, and this is somewhat along the lines of what the mayor was talking about, make sure we put our development standards in the beginning to be human-focused development. Often what I find is that when the community comes to talk about a particular development, I've done this myself, you get more and more concerned and come to the last meeting and start to ask for things to change from the roots. And that's not something that we can actually do if the developer has been working on the development for 5 years or whatever. But if we hear the same things from residents over and over again, whether it's trees, wider sidewalks and bike lanes, ground floor retail, locating driveways away from major pedestrian spaces, we need to put those kind of standards in at the very beginning. And that's one of the main things I want to do when I'm reelected, make sure that we do that.
Great. Thank you, Allison. Thanks everyone for that question. So now we'll move on to the next question. And the next topic is on sustainability, power, and then community investments. This will be a 90-second question. Mountain View hasn't had to face rolling blackouts since August of 2020, but we are seeing our local infrastructure coming under greater pressure. Just last month during the heat wave, Sahara had several local blackouts when people relied on them most when they were stuck at home during 100+ degree weather. The demand on the capacity of everything in our power grid will be going up. As the community grows, I know that there are also some requirements that new developments rely more on electric heating or electric cooking ranges and moving away from natural gas. And this could leave existing housing or mobile and manufactured home communities, dealing with challenges with electrification or a lack of access to efficient energy services. Another topic that has come up is that most mobile home residents don't get to interface directly with their utility company because that's sort of mediated by the park, and that limits some of the options that are available to us. So the question is, what can the city of Mountain View do for existing housing, especially mobile and manufactured home communities, to increase stability, reduce climate impact, and then how can we make sure that we have equitable access to things like fiber-based broadband for all residents of the city? And we'll start with Lee with a minute 30.
Okay, this is a very tough question. I don't think the city owns the electricity is owned by PG&E. So I would assume there are very limited things city can do. It doesn't matter whether it's for the residents in the housing, regular housing, or in the mobile housing. And the city doesn't really have much control over this. But nonetheless, I think the rent control has the other side to it, make the property owners a little less wanted to do anything to improve the situation. But I do think a mobile home has a little bit advantages over this because the property owner himself can actually do upgrade if he wants to. But then this is also a resource issue as well. I would think, if anything need to be improved without using with limited city power over this, or be maybe a plea to the state and to see if the state can allocate some special funding. I know Menlo Park has been, with the help with Josh Becker, have got some special grant to electrify for their residents. And also there are some other program as already talked about, the COPA program.
Very good. Thank you much, Lee. Lucas, you're next.
Thank you. So taking the second part first, the council allocated, I believe it was $100,000 from the American Rescue Plan Act funds to assist with developing a strategy to help get access to broadband for all residents. That's something that we will certainly have to do in collaboration with the county, which also has made this a priority, and the state and federal governments as well. To Lee's point, the power of a city council is in land use authority, and when a project has already been approved or constructed, it's more challenging to compel that property to include certain infrastructure. We can do things like end of life replacement and require the conversion from natural gas to electric infrastructure. But we do have a ton of money made available both at the federal government and the state. The Inflation Reduction Act specifically includes, and so another council member will help me with the number, I think it's something like $400 billion, an astonishing amount of money for climate change mitigation. And a lot of that will have to be the electrification and the modernization of existing structures. So even if it's challenging for us to compel upgrades, what we can do is work with the state and federal governments to secure a lot of this funding, and then work with property owners to help implement these infrastructure improvements.
Great, thank you, Lucas. Allison?
Yes, so thank you. This is a really open question right now, and we need your input in this one. I'm the chair of the Council Environmental Sustainability Committee, and we're looking at accelerating our carbon neutrality goals. And one of the biggest ways we'll do it is to reduce the carbon footprint of existing homes like yours by assisting you in putting in better appliances and other things when yours die out. Or before that, if you want to. This would be things like heat pump heaters, air conditioners, water heaters, electric and induction stoves, these kind of things. Also electric car chargers, solar panels, insulation, using Inflation Reduction Act money and other money. There is money for these things now. And Palo Alto is a model for us. They're a little ahead of the game because they have their own utility. They're putting together a booklet that we can follow, and I would love to get your input on what you would want most. Then as for the fiber optics, as the mayor said, we're studying it. There are only 18 municipal broadband providers in California today, and only 6 provide home service. But with funding through, it is increasingly being seen as basic infrastructure, and the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act may help us. I would like to hear more about exactly.
Okay, Allison, thank you very much for your answer there. And finally, we have Ellen.
Great, thank you. So I guess I'll give the disclaimer now that I work in the wireless space, so I cannot talk about anything related to wireless or broadband due to that. But I am excited that my colleagues voted to address this, so I'll say that. In terms of the thanks, Alex. In terms of the question before, one of the things that I was brainstorming on is the 6 mobile home parks have different owners, and one of the things we did adopt was a mobile home park rent control ordinance. I think that we need to be thinking about, similar to what the mayor was saying, as what the carrots can be for the owners to participate. I'd love for the city to partner with PG&E to do, energy upgrades and audits for all the mobile home park communities. I'd love for the city to try to do a set aside so that people could, be incentivized on their energy and water use, or be able to get some sort of rebates, because I know a lot of that doesn't necessarily exist anymore. But I think part of it will have to be finding a way for the city and the property owners to work together to address some of these issues. Thanks.
Thank you, Ellen. Now we're going to do something a little bit more fun, sort of a special round. You'll have 3 minutes to answer. Again, don't feel compelled to take all 3 minutes. So right now, just as a preamble, you're not running for a single office. You'll be joining a council with 6 other people. 2 of the other people will be here tonight. You'll have to develop a working relationship and some rapport with your fellow council members. And so we wanted to ask each of you to pose a question to one of the other candidates tonight. We did sort of start out and pre-generate a round robin list of questions that each candidate could ask each other. And I believe you all had provided some input. I could read your questions out, but I'm going to let you all sort of do the asking, I think, if that works out for you. And the first one was a question from Ellen to Lee.
Great. Do I?
Yep, you're yeah, you can get the question right now.
Okay. So if you could be on one city board or commission, what would it be?
We need to unmute Lee.
I would like to be on the sustainability task force, if that's possible.
Sure. Do you want to explain why that's the one you're most interested in?
They do a lot of interesting work. I think prior to COVID, I subscribed to the City of Mountain View newsletter, and I got this email. It said, "Oh yeah, we can track everyone's carbon footprint." So I went into the City Hall, attended the meeting, and they actually developed this app with Google's collaboration that literally tracking, your carbon footprint from, how much you drive and things like that. And I was very inspired. And I work in the space. I work at Tesla, work in the space for alternative energy. And so I think that will align with my core value as well. Thank you so much for this
Great.
question.
Thanks, Lee. The next one was Lee asking a question to Lucas.
Hi, Lucas. I would like to ask you if you could have, if anything you've done while you were at City Council that you wish you have done hasn't really been done, what would that be?
Oh, that's a great question. The highest priority work plan item that the council hasn't been able to get to, in my opinion, is the anti-displacement strategy and the replacement requirements in particular. I think you had referenced in an earlier response that SB 330, which right now provides the strongest replacement protections, will sunset in 2030. And state legislatures, the will could change, and there may be pressure from developers to sunset the replacement requirement early, right? Or they may elect not to extend it past 2030. And I think that means there's urgency in the city taking on that work and figuring out how can we put in place similar protections. Every year that goes by, the housing stock gets older. Fires occur. We could have an earthquake. There could be some other type of redevelopment pressure that occurs. And we really need to find a way to make sure that as these older buildings get redeveloped, that there's a set aside of units for that are affordable to help preserve the socioeconomic diversity that Mountain View has long had. So anti-displacement strategy and figuring out the displacement impact.
Great. Thank you, Lucas. And next up, we have a question from Lucas to Allison.
You can probably guess. What is one part of the housing element that you think needs improvement?
one part of the housing element now that needs improvement. Well, you know, we were just submitted the answers to this. So what people listening may not know is that Housing and Community Development, which is the agency, the state agency that tells us whether the judges our housing element. They're the teacher that grades us and tells us whether we have to redo our report. And they've given us a number of ways we need to improve. I would say chiefly they've said that we have not done enough work on affirmatively furthering fair housing, a bit of a tongue twister. But what that means is they found that people, and particularly families, do better when low-income people, when they're integrated among people of different income levels. So we have to make sure that we're not putting all our affordable housing in lower income neighborhoods. And in particular, I think they want us to look south of El Camino, which is like by the high school, by Cuesta Park, in some of those neighborhoods, and see where we could put more affordable housing, which I have to say, we actually did a lot of work. It's a hard, it's a hard treasure hunt, and we're gonna have to search a little more.
Great, thanks, Allison, especially for that context and that question. And then finally, Allison, you have a question for Ellen.
Okay, so now you're gonna have to help me with this, because I wrote 4 questions for Ellen, and I don't know which one you picked.
Well, I can read this then. The question that I guess that we chose was the qualities that you would be looking for. So Ellen, the question that Allison asked of you is, what qualities would you look for in people that you are voting on as representatives to the Rental Housing Committee?
Great, thanks. I was like, please not 4 questions in 90 seconds. Qualities for the Rental Housing Commission. When I'm thinking about the RHC, I'm thinking about the group as a whole and making sure we have a variety of perspectives. So I think, some of it is called out that we need to have somebody who owns property, somebody who I think just works in Mountain View, but doesn't necessarily have to live in Mountain View. But I want the widest and broadest expanse in terms of experience, age, and I really want to be able to have it be representative of our city. So those are some things I'm thinking about. Also, somebody who loves to read, because the RHC packets are intense, and there's a lot of reading involved, but also curious, because I think to be on the RHC there needs to be a natural curiosity on how to, what I'd say another quality is to help our most vulnerable. Mountain View, our mantra is that we're a community for all. And so I would hope that all RHC members also believe that. And as they're thinking about policies and things are coming before them, that's the lens with which they are, applying.
Thank you, Ellen. And then we'll just have one last question, essentially a closing statement. So, serving on a city council is as much about life experience and character as it is about any given particular policy or politics. And, something that we are generally doing is voting for you all to be community leaders. I think this shows here tonight, you're not just laying out your policy preferences, but you're helping educate us, the community, about what council can do and how we can work together to achieve our goals, which is very critically important. And so in this regard, feel free to tell us something that you would like the mobile home community to know about you to help us decide who to vote for in this election. And we'll begin with Allison. Thank you.
Hi, so thank you. I guess some of the things I'd like people to know is that I've had a commitment to permanently affordable and community controlled housing. It's kind of been the core of my work off and on for decades. It's the center of what I've done most of my adult life. And I hope that both on council and the work that I did before I was on council demonstrates that to people. You know, I'm not afraid to stand up for community needs and say what needs to be said when times are tough. Although I do also try to be diplomatic and choose my battles, not fight on all fronts. I don't think that really works. I like working on our council team, especially the incumbents who are here before you right now. I learn everybody brings different skills and experiences, certainly a lot that I don't know. So I've learned from everyone on council and staff, and also from the public. I learned really a lot from the public. And I guess that's the other thing I would want people to know, that I'm always open. You know, most often people email me, and I do respond to almost every email, unless it's super rude. But yeah, also, you know, meeting in person and so forth, that I'm open to input, and you know more about your situation than I do, I believe.
Great. Thank you very much, Allison. Now we have Lee.
Hi, I thank you so much for inviting me to this forum, and nice to meeting everyone at the meeting today. I would like you to know I'm running for city council, have no political motivation or anything else, and I just really want to serve the community. So I've been criticized that I didn't have prior experience serving in a civic role, but I can let you know I've been working hard all my life. Anything I've done, I wanted to do an A+ job. So as far as I know, being a city council experience is one thing, but I'm a very fast learner. I can assure you, I will be very fair. I'm a very fair person. I will listen, and if there are anything, I mean, the good thing to have me is I'm fresh, so I don't have preconception of any things that I would take a position one way or the other. I will evaluate the situation fairly, and if you're voting for me, I will representing to the best interest of the large community. Thank you. Please vote for me. I'm number 3 on the ballot.
Thank you very much, Lee. Next up, we have Lucas.
Thank you. I'm going to start by stealing a couple of things that Vice Mayor Hicks said. And one of them that I agree with very strongly is we have a very good council team, a very thoughtful group of individuals with different experiences and expertise on different subjects. And I think the decisions that we come up with, are obviously born out of political compromise, but they reflect different skill sets and different life experiences. And it's been a great pleasure serving with my colleagues. And then also, we're accessible. Please reach out. We want to hear what you have to say. I had the good fortune to canvass in the Moffett Boulevard Mobile Home Park recently, and had some great conversations with several of the residents there. An hour-long conversation with, I hope she doesn't mind the shout out, Gloria Mungo, who reminded me there are a lot of low-income seniors who need small repairs, right? And we used to fund a program at the city, and that was suspended during the pandemic. I didn't realize that, and she informed me that there's the city has had this, has funded this program. It was extremely valuable to her, and she hoped that we could bring it back. And so that's something that if I hadn't gone out and knocked on her door, I'm not sure I would have recognized that. And I think all of us want to hear and learn from the experiences of our residents. That's how we make good decisions.
Great. Thank you very much, Lucas. And finally, Ellen.
Great. Thank you. Well, I think that one of the things that I am really thrilled about, especially speaking to all of you, is that I think after 2 decades, we finally have mobile home park rent control. And I think that's to say that the vice mayor and the mayor and I heard you and worked the last 4 years to try to bring that forward. And it hasn't been an easy path or linear, it's zigged and zagged. But we are here listening to you and trying to work to find a solution. And I think even now, it was a compromise on all parties, but it was a discussion, it was collaborative, and it was collegial. And I think that those are the things that are important for all of you to know as we were, 32 days away from election day, is that being on a city council requires that, because things take, 4 people, the council majority. And so those are the things that I bring forward as a candidate. And I feel fortunate to work with, 2 of the other people here. I don't have experience working with you yet, Lee, but to really bring about change, and that the good things take time and patience, but they're worth the wait. So would really appreciate your consideration. Thanks.
Great. Thank you very much, Ellen. So that concludes the candidate forum tonight. I'll just sort of wrap up a little bit. We're going to end a little early with 4 candidates. We got through some of the questions a little bit quicker. Alex is having fun. And so, yeah, just again, wanted to thank all of the candidates for your time tonight and answering your questions. As they said, you can reach out to them. Their emails are either on their campaign websites or at the Mountain View City Council forum or website has their information. As I said, we'll be hosting this on YouTube, and then we'll be sending out more information about that in our email list to all of our mobile home residents. The election is coming up, vote by mail. We'll be discussing this forum and other topics relevant to the mobile home community at our Saturday meetings. So we look forward to seeing all of our residents there. And with that, I think we can conclude the session. Thanks again, everyone.
Thank you.
Have a nice night and enjoy your
Thank you so
weekend.
much.